We are back and ready to get into our first match of the day, one match of 5. We're going to be playing through Group B, and we do have a xBlyzes versus RDU up first. And honestly, I just can't wait to see these players get going because not only, we're going to see more of these matchups play out, subtle, but I just want to see what xBlyzes can do, right? He's on like arguably the big stage now as he's on Grandmasters for his first match on stream. So I'm just looking forward to seeing how this one goes.
I can't believe you made me wait that long to try talking. Do I sound normal? Do I sound like I'm trying to
normal.
Put on... Okay, I don't sound like I'm trying to put on an adult voice to get served alcohol anymore, right? Does that sound good?
No. You sound fine for me. I'm sure the audience picked up on that too. But yeah, you sound okay for now, mate. So I don't get to just struggle not to laugh at you constantly. But we sound okay. Hopefully we're good to go, guys. Again, we apologize for the delays. We want to get into the games just as much, probably if not more than you guys do, actually. So we really want to get into these too, but we are getting close. Double pre-span here, Sottle. So once more, I feel like there's a theme been going on so far this weekend for us. It's Mage, Warrior, Druid as the three classes for both players here. And just from what we've seen, and I know all the players only had a short amount of time to prep, but how do you feel about the outcome here of this Mage, Warrior, Druid 3-deck play if we assume Priest is being banned?
I mean, it almost doesn't matter how I feel about it. This is kind of the point I was trying to make beforehand. Whether my normal voice makes people take my points more or less seriously is up for debate. But it clearly is the lineup that has been successful in week 1 because the players who are here in top 8 have this lineup kind of overwhelmingly, right? So this kind of does seem to be the successful lineup. Whether I want to pick holes in this individual deck or that individual deck, this does seem to be the one that's doing well.
Yeah, so do you think it's just fair to say the players who are here because of that very short amount of time preparation and it paying off? Even you look at RDU and Tice being here, right? Although they don't have the same exact decks, they do have similar lineups and they obviously, talk with each other in practice.
I think, a huge part of it this week 1 is going to have to come down to preparation. The players that put the hours in or the players that had a practice group around them who were, splitting up resources efficiently and feeding deck codes back and forth until everyone got a lineup they were happy with. I think this 1 week, the players who put the time in, who put the practice in, who not only found the good decks, but also learned how to play the good decks, which is an entirely different animal. And they're going to get rewarded here in week 1 much, much more than they will do further down the line.
Right, well, we are into this game 1. As you saw the mulligans fly by while we were chatting, we can see that both players now do have access to the overgrowths as well. I do have access to 2, as well as that Omu. And it is a note that xBlyzes is playing the Survival of the Fittest Druid, whereas RDU is playing this Malygos Druid, the first time we get to see it on stream, Sol.
Yeah, and so honestly, this isn't a deck that I've really had a great deal of faith in up until this point. Because it's a deck that I really don't see colossal benefit in over the other Druid decks that you can play, but I do see colossal downsides. Sure, you do gain some points in control matchups for the amount of greed that you have in there, but the amount that you lose in mid-range matchups, for me, is absolutely not worth it. And I think, recently on Twitter and, around some of the streams, we've been seeing players go more and more in the direction of Exotic Mount Seller or Broom, even in their Druid, to try and trim things down, make things smoother and faster, not slower and clunkier. And for me, that is the direction the Druid should be looking to go in.
All right, and already this is getting off to a fairly explosive start with the double overgrowths available. Well, overgrowths available across the board. It does mean that xBlyzes is going to go first, arguably with the Guardian Animals. And honestly, the double stealth is actually, I would say, the best outcome if you are going to go first, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Double stealth is hugely important if you are going to pop off first with the Guardian Animals, because there is a danger that your opponent gets too good of a swing turn back into you if you go Guardian Animals first in this matchup. A lot of times you'll be looking to go like Kael'thas instead and just get a huge pop-off turn so that you have too much in play for a counter Guardian Animals. Obviously, we're talking about the rushing cleave, that if you just have one of these minions stealthed and one that can be attacked into, Guardian Animals can make a huge mess of it. But with double stealth, no such luck for RDU to be able to pick this board apart.
Yeah, and this is starting to get pretty crazy here for RDU now. He does have Omu, which does refresh mana crystals, but honestly for me, a lot of the time the card becomes like an Anubis-Ath, if that makes sense, right? It's just an extra body to go with the turn you were going to do anyway. is how I see the spell burst effect working 9 times out of 10. But most importantly, the double bloom is absolutely huge now. That bloom being generated means that he has access to even, in some respects, just a straight Malygos double bloom play for some raw damage.
Yeah, and it's kind of insane. The fact that he did get double Twilight Runner there is powerful, not only because of the counter cleave potential I was talking about, but also he's dumped a lot of cards on Ramp, Bloom, Survival of the Fittest, cards that just have effects that don't immediately put stuff in play for you. But the fact he's then paying that off with double Twilight Runner means that he immediately refills his hand with more resources after using all of those cards to get himself into this insane board position.
RDU here has almost everything, just except for really the Geppetto is what you're looking for in this deck. If there's a card that you can draw which makes all of these the Malygos shenanigans really pay off, it is that Geppetto, like almost on curve. Because right now, as you can see, with so many blooms, Innovate, the Omu as well, just a Geppetto into, honestly, Malygos or Alexstrasza would almost just be straight up game winning at this point.
Yeah, it's very true. This Runic Carvings, though, can allow RDU to create some pretty powerful swing turns here. Like I said, he is going to have to pop off with the double Omu. This is part of the Malygos combo that you generally do want to activate. But almost more commonly with this deck, you will pop off with combo pieces like this just for tempo. There's honestly very few matchups where I think you end up executing the full Malygos combo. So you can see that's absolutely what RDU is doing here. He's using all of his tools for a maximum tempo swing because this is an enormously tempo-based matchup. Like, RDU cannot be behind on board for one more turn there or he's just dead. So the Omu Germination combo means that the first Omu goes off and Spell Burst refreshes all your mana crystals, but then the new copy that spawned still has a fresh Spell Burst on it, which is what enabled RDU to spend so much mana this turn that he is now pretty much all in with very little to do in his hand and looking to hope that that Twilight Guardian picks up something impactful for him to do next time.
Yep, it really is going to have to. Blyze, on the other hand, has a ton of cards, but just needs the wiggle room to play them. And honestly, without having Kel'Thas in hand, it's a tough hand to get rid of this, isn't it? I feel like just that 1KT unlocks so much of these plays and some of the insane power plays. But although the minions are a bit bigger, he does have to just work this out because he is going to be taking damage. And as you mentioned, the Twilight Runner is going to be able to start to refill RDU's hand. But speaking of that, he does just have Overflow instead.
Interesting ordering here. RDU could look to attack first, just in case there was something he wanted to spend 9 or 10 mana on immediately off the draw, so he could then just innovate Lightning Bloom or whatever to get the play out immediately, and then follow up on an Overflow next turn. But it looks like he's going to go the other way around here, just drop the Overflow first. Does mean that is almost always going to be the majority of his turn, although he would have, 5 more mana to spend off draws if he were to pick something up. So yeah, I think debate either way on optimal ordering there for RDU.
Right. Finally, though, that Geppetto, not too late, I'll say, to be fair, because there is still the Malygos in hand. There is still in the deck, so there is still options. But it's getting progressively more difficult to drop down if Blyze can make some kind of heavy play on the board this next turn, because Geppetto, it is slow. It's an 8 mana, 6/6 that, yes, you can draw the 1 cards, and maybe if one is Malygos, the blooms are going to save RDU. But as I mentioned, I said Blyze just needs a KT to go nuts, and he does have one now.
Nature
absolutely does have one, yeah. He saw him give himself the little round of applause as that came out, but there's the cleave interaction I was talking about a little bit later than we might have expected. I was talking about it in that Guardian Animals versus Guardian Animals interaction, but RDU does end up losing access to some of his card draw, but I think honestly that was a deliberate risk he was willing to run. The reason being this Geppetto that he's playing this turn, he didn't really want to draw extra cards that turn. He only has 8 cards left in his deck. So drawing 2 extra cards that turn was not only going to give him hand size issues, it was also going to make him more likely to draw exactly these key minions that he wouldn't then be able to rip off the Geppetto.
Yeah, and this is where you change direction. You mentioned earlier, it's often that Malygos combo isn't actually game-winning, but it is just more, this is going to have to be a play to set up the rest of the game, right?
Yeah. And it is a pretty crucial addition that he got both of them here, because without it, he was not going to be able to make any impact on this Gidra on the other side. But now he has Malygos double Bog Beam available. Still only 16, so he's going to have to drop a Moonfire on top of that as well, which is so many resources invested into not dying right now.
Yeah, and this is where things get a little bit scary, isn't it? Because RDU has to use all of this removal to clear the board, and now he's just relying on, I hope the Ysera dragons are good, which isn't a bad plan, don't get me wrong, but if that's your whole plan for having this deck available, he still has the xBlyzes in deck somewhere, but overall I do feel like RDU is slipping a little bit here, even though it looked like he was in control for that early game.
Here's the downside of the lack of Broom in your deck, where you do just have to kind of play some slow, clunky animals to set up for a turn, even regardless of the enormous amount of stats that he has generated from Survival of the Fittest. They are still slow.
Well, I said Radioactive Hope, his dragons are good. His dragons are pretty good.
It's still not quite good enough, though, for the board state, is it? Board state does not compete.
I guess he just has to punch through, right? Is he... So my question is, I don't think RDU needs to hold on to this Malygos anymore, because does he even have any spells left that are going to benefit from it?
Yeah. Not too many.
And maybe one Nature Studies, I think?
There's no world where he gets to keep it anyway, because it just dies to the cleave next turn anyway.
Yeah.
So he might as well just trade it through. So the spells remaining is kind of a moot point even. Like, that Mali's just dead. Might as well use it for the efficient trade now and get it caught in the splash damage.
Yeah, with no way to really interact with this Thresher, then, yep, you are completely right. It's going to get cleaned up either way. Same with this Waxer Dread. But now Blazer can just take control. His minions, his Ysera are a little bit bigger than RDU's. It's going to do roughly the same job, but better. And he still has access to that Nature Studies in his hand. And what are the spells that Blaze is going to be looking for from this Nature Studies? Is there anything that's really going to just end the game for Blaze?
He wants payoff cards, right? Just big, expensive cards at this point. Overflow, Survival of the Fittest, because his hand is Kael'thas and 3 cheap spells with Lightning Bloom, Wild Growth, and the excess mana that's going to come off his Wild Growth. And, of course, the Nature Studies itself being a cheap spell. So he is missing one clean ingredient, which is the actual payoff spell for that Kael'thas to end the game. But honestly, talk about moot points. That might also just be a moot point, because his board is just winning right now. Like, it really doesn't matter too much, the rest of the contents of his hand.
I mean, that is the benefit, right, of just having the Survival of the Fittest go off, and second you stick a board in any way, it is so big. There just aren't really the cards in a general game of Hearthstone to actually deal with this.
I am the storm of your demise. You've got me fucked.
Okay. Decent dragons. Problem is, if he now Lightning Blooms, he is going to give that minion spellburst Haunt, which makes a vastly superior cleave available for Blyze than the one that he has currently.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, good decision here, I think, for RDU not to cleave. And this Nozdormu, not like this, Raven. Not like this. Woo! Blyze is still going to try the Kael'thas turn here? Surely you make the attack at this point just to get your time back. Okay.
So,
okay. Whew.
Do I need to remind you of Blyze's track record of scores this year, or this past 12 months? Yeah. He's good enough, and the thing that's impressive there, although it looked like a straightforward turn, it's like, yeah, both your dudes in cleave, is that Blyze made that decision in a split second and did it, right? And again, it wasn't a rocket science turn or anything, but it was just a turn that the decision had to be made quickly. And honestly, we've seen players mess up similar turns in the past.
Hang on, Swipe is lethal here?
Oh,
xBlyzes is lethal.
No, xBlyzes is just lethal. Wow, what?
Yeah.
Look at RDU. He's like, oh, I got this. Exact. absolutely insane. He did have the hero power as well with the bloom, but out of nowhere, I thought Blyze was all over that game. But RDU with the Alexstrasza off the top, and the 15 damage exact was enough to finish it. And honestly, we were a bit caught off guard there, but it's because on RDU's screen, he saw the Alex before we did, and obviously played it and locked it in. Bit of a surprise overall, but yeah, out of nowhere, RDU, I think, almost stole that win, right?
Yeah, and like, it's why I was interested by Blythe's turn, because like, I don't fault him, of course, for popping off with the Kael'thas, because it looked like a Kael'thas turn, but I think he took extra actions that he didn't need to take before he like made the cleave into the Nozdormu to give him time.
Right.
So I don't know if his like nature studies decision was rushed, for example, because he tried to do that before the cleave actually happened, which kind of cost him a position, because I did see the turn ending and then was like, actually, he's not ended up in that good of a position here. Like, there's a lot of damage coming back the other way. And I'll confess, I didn't see what the nature studies options were, because I was thrown by the Nozdormu as well. So whether there was a better option there that could have defended him in that position, I don't know. But it did look like, you know, he tried to commit to one too many actions before, you know, just getting his time back and settling him down and having a look at the turn. Whether that changes anything, I'm not entirely sure. I have to go back and look at it.
All right, well, we are going to go straight into our game number 2. RDU is going to go on this Bomb Warrior Blazer, going back to the Druid once more. And I'm just going to take a glance at RDU's Bomb Warrior list, because as you may have seen, it's a little bit different from what we've seen so far. Cutting class, I always want to say glass for some reason, but anyway, cutting class is in there. The Captain Greenskin in there as well as a Zephyrus. So this is a much more draw quicker. Buff these wrench calibers a lot, because he does have run 2 upgrades in the list as well. This is just turbo bomb, as opposed to the more control warrior bomb archetypes we've seen from other players. So honestly, I haven't seen too much of this list get played, but I think I already just prefer this style than the control list we have been seeing.
Right. It's a heck of a start from Blyze while you were giving that explanation, though. Blink and you will miss half of this game of Hearthstone, and he is curving out pretty perfectly now into that wild growth as well to keep on going.
Oh, Bladestorm. Pretty good pickup there, just to have something to actually stop at least some of this, and he did remove the card draw effect there from a Blyze. The cleave, not really mattering right now. It's not like RDU can play minions.
Right.
But still, he's got to take a ton of damage. Could just be dead to nature studies. RDU starting to climb back with some face damage.
I'm just waiting for it, Raven. I'm saying nothing. This is always lethal. Boom. That is a Blyze game of Hearthstone right there. Like, this man is just a gamer. He is an absolute lord. And if you thought there was any gap in his armor based on that first game, he is straight back with a bullet. Absolute lightning bolt of a game number 2 to square the series up. That is the form that we've been seeing from this guy up until this point. Quickest game of Hearthstone we have seen this weekend by some distance, I would say.
Yeah, by the easily large amount of distance. But I don't often say this about Hearthstone matches, because it is a bit of a weird thing. But I do think we're at a very fair 1-1 now with these players, because like Blyze looks so good in the Druid mirror, and then just Alex off the top, because RDU just had the minions in play for one turn, and that just ended the game so suddenly when Blyze looked in so much control. Maybe you could argue it's fair, so to speak, for Blyze to just go, okay, boom, next game, let's go. So now, 1-1, the Druids are gone. So it is just going to be Warrior versus Mage now for both these players. Maybe Warrior mirrors, maybe Mage mirrors, but you know what I mean. I'm not used to casting the game so fast, Sol.
I know. And these 2 decks have both kind of been on the struggle bus, based on our broadcast yesterday. They had varying records in other regions, back and forth. I know Tyler was struggling with some Bomb Warrior as well before picking up a victory at the end. We saw mixed success from Mage in the Americas region as well, both Tempo Mage and the Turtle Mage coming out as well on the Americas broadcast. So I think these are 2 decks with big question marks around them, and they're 2 decks that we really have seen deciding series on our day 1, both positively and negatively.
Right, and on the top side of the board there, xBlyzes is going to be back on that more control style of bomb warrior we have been seeing from a lot of the other players so far this weekend. So it isn't the turbo bomb, it is just the the rattle goes in there for late game, but the Deathwing, the double blood bow brute, the brawls, and the horde pillager in there as well. So more of the list we've been seeing, and we've been seeing the list actually struggle with as well. So we'll see how that pays off for him so far, as RDU is off to a, I would say, a pretty solid start with this opening hand. So the apprentice is there.
Yes, he's basically got everything that you want in this matchup, which is he's got early pressure, he's gone 1-drop, 2-drop, and started hitting his opponent, which is fantastic. He hit card draw with the Arcane Intellect, check, and he already has pop-off engines in hand with the Sorcerer's Apprentice and the Mana Cyclone.
And now, as always, I'm just excited to see how he utilizes these. RDU, I know, has played a good chunk of this deck and has very... I feel like RDU really latches onto a style of a deck, right? We've seen people play this mage either hyper-aggressive and just play a Sorcerer's Apprentices early, or maybe just play them for 1 or 2 guaranteed spells and a Mana Cyclone. We've seen players hold off and hold off and hold off till potentially the perfect moment. I am interested to just see RDU's take, because he's very strong in his opinions on all things regarding Hearthstone.
He is, yeah, and it's one of the things that we love about him. He is very, very passionate and very, very dedicated. That is, one thing that you will never be able to fault RDU for, and I absolutely love to see more people in the scene like that. That does come with some fierce opinions on things every now and again.
Oh, there's a Mana Giant as well.
Now. Yep.
And on that note, Subtle, because the 1-drops in Mage are a huge part of the discussion point, RDU, 1 Brain Freeze, double Devolving Missiles, double Magic Trick, and 1 Mirror Image in there, along with 2 Primordial Studies. So, again, very interesting that he's lent way more towards the double Devolving Missiles, which I think might be the most uncommon build.
Yeah, Devolving Missiles obviously has matchups. It's extremely good against Paladin if you're expecting to see that. It has great utility if you're thinking of some fringe matchups like Big Warrior outside of that. It's arguably very strong against Druid, although I'm not necessarily convinced about that. Like, I don't really think you want to be in the position as Mage where, like, oh, great, he's made a huge board and I have Devolving Missiles to counter it. Like, you want to be the one with the huge board before you get there, and should generally build your deck to fill that purpose. But it's really, really matchup dependent, and I think that's where we're seeing the differences in people's lists, is just based on which matchups they were expecting to play against here in week 1 of GM. But enough about that, because the pop-off turn has finally now been reached. Evocation Double Sork! This giant can be played this turn. It's just whether or not it is the question for RDU, because it will become brawl bait if he chooses to drop it down this turn.
There's even coins, so he can actually whip in that 1 thief as well as getting the Cyclone off. Look at his Evocation. They all look cheap to me, Subtle.
Ray of Frost, double discount. 3 secrets playable. Only short of all being potentially 4 of them. No, there's 3.
Oh, sorry, 3. Yeah, 3.
Yep, Barrier, Entity, Vaporize.
Yeah, the double entity is the 2 of. Yep.
But I imagine it's a Sork turn. It looks like a Sork turn to me. Yeah, I agree with this 100%. Push for some more resources. It's not really ideal. Deep Freeze is great, but he would have loved to have seen 1 or 2 more cards, either off the Evocation or off the Sorcerer's Apprentice, that turned into good cards for himself. By which I mean like Magic Trick, Primordial Studies, things that you just cast for 0 and then actually give you a permanent card in your hand. Comparable to the way that Rogue uses Secret Passage in the Burgle Rogue deck that we saw a little bit yesterday, where you play Secret Passage and then you turn all the cards that you draw into permanent cards that you then get to keep at the end of the turn. I think that's really crucial in the Warrior matchup.
And interestingly enough here, we do see the Giant committed. And in general, this looks a little bit ropey because, yes, as you mentioned, it plays into Brawl. You put it out there without using Conjurer's Calling. But if you take a look at RDU's hand, although it's not castable this turn, he does have Deep Freeze twice, right?
Yeah.
So he does have a lot more big, sort of beefy minions that are strong against Warrior that he can play out in the late game. So because of that, I actually like the Giant being played by RDU, because in the worlds where it sticks, you've got an 8-8 and you probably just win the game. When it doesn't stick, it pulls out removal. Oh, okay, well soon I'll be able to just go deep freeze into deep freeze. That's insane.
Yeah, I do like it as well. I actually clarify when I was saying like this has to be a Cyclone turn. I didn't want him to Giant and not Cyclone and then have like a valueless hand if his Giant got dealt with. The fact that he Cycloned and then got more cheap spells to enable the Giant, yeah, absolutely do both at that point, because you've already picked up the value you need to keep going off the Cyclone. Right? So you can just go for the straight up pressure play with the Giant.
So here, although xBlyzes has done a decent job of removing some high threats, the Giant, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, they're long gone. What kind of position do you think he's in now, though? Because he has the 24 health, he's just dropped Rattlegore. Do you think actually xBlyzes has pulled ahead in this game?
I do. I think he's started to look comfortable now, having survived the pop-off turn from the mage, and now he's kind of in control of the board state, still has plenty of health left to play with, has basically an unanswerable minion without devolving missiles coming down. He is looking pretty chill, but there is the ultimate X Factor still left remaining in RDU's deck, which is the copy of that Solarian Prime that he has already successfully shuffled in.
Oh, okay. Not the best minion, but definitely not the worst. He's a bit of protection for the Water Elementals, but Lord Barov is going to have something to say for that. I imagine the Lackeys is going to go on that Barov to proc the Death Rattle, which is to deal 1 damage to all of the minions.
Yeah, xBlyzes actually did make his life a little bit awkward because the Taunt spawning did shut off his Bladestorm potential. Like, up until that point, he could have traded off his 2-3, and then the lowest health minions on the board would have been one of the Water Elementals, which, you know, maybe he could have lined up a Bladestorm, but once the Taunt appeared, that wasn't possible anymore. But I think his line was most likely always Barov in that position, so no real harm done.
And I do like the usage of just that Armor Smith. Just get that extra little bit boost of armor, you know, push yourself out of those scenarios where the mage does get hold of a lot of burn and cause yourself some trouble, because really, outside of a transform effect, with Rattlegore on board, you will just win eventually, right? Unless you get burst down. But speaking of transform effects, there's the 2 of number 2 devolving missiles that we that I mentioned Radu is running, and all of them went on not the Rattlegore. Would you believe it? He could have pinged it first.
Wow. I mean, we just saw the newly christened Lord Bruv come down, but xBlyzes confirming once again that he is an absolute Lord, bruv.
Out of the 2 of us, I don't know what pains me more. The more that, generally based on where we live, I might be the more likely to say that thing. But it also hurts me the most, I feel, to have it said or to say it myself.
Yeah.
Oh. Another Frost Nova, though, from RDU. So although he didn't deal with the Rattlegore the way he wanted to, he does have a ton of stall for it. So that's not attacking face anytime soon.
There's just a small matter of the fact that RDU is down to 12 with a bunch of bombs shuffled into his deck, and xBlyzes is just casually chilling at 41 right now and has all the time in the world to wait for those bombs to just detonate. RDU's looking like in serious trouble to me.
Astonishing.
Oh, okay. Well,
Octosari! He's just dead! He's just simply dead.
Marvel.
That is incredible. xBlyzes, welcome to GM.
Dead.
You will fit right in.
xBlyzes was chilling, but his minions are also chilling. And not being able to get these attacks off is probably a little bit frustrating right about now. RDU's effectively going to draw his whole deck in a second.
Amazing. Just do the honorable thing, RDU. Come on, you know you want to.
True mastery takes dedication.
He's gonna make us wait, Raven.
does
I
not
can't
want
believe
to.
it. I can't believe it. He's gonna make us wait.
Well, xBlyzes does have Brawl available. Well, okay, now he has 2. So that just means it's going to be a pretty solid way to get rid of some of these threats, especially if he does this and decides to go quite wide and have a pop-off turn of his own with the Sorcerer's Apprentice into Brawl.
You don't want to hit face first there for the 3rd bomb? Or the, yeah, 3rd bomb at this point? Sorry, dying, draws cards. No! What is happening? How does the Octasari live there? This is absurd. I refuse. I refuse to believe
now just
this,
to end the
Raven.
game.
Oh, he always draws 2 bombs. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, there's one.
There's one.
Second. I mean, don't even get excited about it. It's always happening. It's always, literally always happens. Yeah, every single time. I don't know what you're worried about.
I told you. xBlyzes doesn't need the Brawl to kill the Octasari. He doesn't need to do anything like that. The bombs always get there, and xBlyzes is going to go up 2-1 here against RDU. Wow. These games are pretty exciting, so honestly, for the first match today, I don't think I was ready for this. I wanted to just slowly go here. So, but yeah, it looks like xBlyzes is doing pretty well so far. Yeah, the Warrior looking a little bit more promising, at least so far today. But again, I feel like that there is just a missing link somewhere in these mage builds. I think there is just one more step that needs to be taken somewhere. I don't know what that step is, or I'd be a genius. That just makes the deck just look more solid, more consistently.
All I know is that xBlyzes is going to fit right in, because if there's one thing that I know GMs in Europe have to be capable of, it's scamming people with Octasaris. Like that's you just have to be able to do that to be able to get through the door and not get relegated. So it's an incredible achievement from xBlyzes to be like already putting up this level of entertainment with the decks that he's brought, the plays that he has. Obviously, he doesn't have much agency in his opponents getting an Octasari, but he is just naturally entertaining to watch play. Like, is it just me? Like, is it just because it's so refreshing to see a European player just play at 100 miles an hour, or is he just an incredibly entertaining Hearthstone player?
It's 100% the speed.
Okay.
So we are going to see a Mage Mirror kicking off for maybe the final game of this series if xBlyzes can take it. And again, just because Mage deck lists are very interesting to me right now. xBlyzes are running 1 Devolving Missiles, but outside of that and Legendaries, he is 2 of all the way. He's got the 2 Valid Spell Wings, even running 2 Arcane Intellect as well to maybe shore up some of those card draw issues that he can run into, and has that Shemvala in there too. So this looks like a very solid list overall. I'm excited to see if it's going to pay off for him, as now he has access to 2 Evolving Missiles in his deck with the help of that Wand Thief.
I will crush your delusions.
Yeah, decent opener from RDU here, though, as well, which, unless you get Devolving Missiled here, which, you've just talked about the relative risk-reward of that in this situation, then it's not too bad to be kicking things off with a nice early Astromancer Solarian, but xBlyzes actually going to turn it down, just let RDU have it for the sake of maximum tempo, just really wanted to develop a Spider Tank there.
We did see the power on this yesterday, right? It wasn't the same matchup, but it was just getting this 3-4 down early, just to say, okay, well, I either can have a Spider Tank or have a Spider Tank with a very good activated effect if needed. And I do quite like it from xBlyzes, because there has to be some pretty specific answers and at least soaking up some resources if RDU is going to deal with this.
You fight me, you get
Just back on the Spider Tank train, all right. I'm kind of curious about the line, though, because this has not been my Tempo Mage Mirror experience. My Tempo Mage Mirror experience says that Solarian Primes are extremely important in the matchup, as creating kind of situations I was talking about before, where when one player pops off really, really hard, the other player has to be able to do the same thing, and then both players have to be able to do it every single turn. And the first person that can't do it dies. Really, really helpful with that is being able to draw multiple Solarian Primes on multiple different turns. Oh, yeah. So I really think having those yourself and denying them from your opponent is potentially much more important than a little bit of early tempo that you get from a Spider Tank.
Right, and this is very interesting as well. The Kirintor Tricaster is not a card I really see ever picked as an option here, because of its, it does increase the cost of your spells, but it does increase, obviously, the spell damage quite significantly. So now I'm just excited to see what RDU has planned for this card. Maybe it was just the best of a bad bunch. Or do you think there's something he's going to have like an actual impact? Maybe just comboed with Cram Session, right? Is that the tech?
I mean, it's something, yeah. It's 3 spell damage is 3 spell damage. Like, if you're going to draw cards, you're going to draw cards, right? Like, it's still a minion. It's still a threat. If your opponent wants to leave it alive, you still get to hit something with it. So there's a pretty good chance, especially, as I mentioned, RDU has a Solarian Prime in his deck. So the value of him drawing a card is significantly higher than, you know, the starting base of his deck, because he has one particular card in his deck that's so much better than all the others. Well, maybe Sorcerer's Apprentice. It's about the same power level as Sorcerer's Apprentice. Let's put it that way.
But this is the big deal here, and you're going to see this now on both sides of the board here and in both players' hands. Is the reason I've talked a lot about lack of card draw or having access to card draw in Mage is if you've got a large hand size, you can always win the game, right? Like there's always something you can do with all this many Mage cards, right? You just can. RDU, huge hand size now because he did get off that Kirin Tor with the Cram Session. Here comes the Solarian Prime, and already this is looking, okay, maybe a bit too good here for RDU, but the Flame Strike was, I think, potentially enough here.
Yeah. RDU could have done with one of those say when buttons at that point. Like, as soon as the Flame Strike happens, like, okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm good, fam. I'm good. Just stop there. We're chilling. It's fine.
I do think if RDU could see xBlyzes' hand right now, even with all those discards, he would be quite... Oh, Sal's favorite.
This is just a 30-30. xBlyzes is dead.
Oh, yeah, it's Ray of Frost to hold off, and there might actually be a transform effect from this one thief as well. I think he has to go for Thief, right? For Polymorph first.
Yeah, sure.
Because he could, like, I think Ray could be better in the future, whereas Polymorph right now just makes a decision, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. What's he AIing for? I'm curious. His own Conjurer's Calling, perhaps, so he can swing back against this with more Ray of Frost? I don't know. Okay, he doesn't AI this turn. I was fine with the AI as a pick over the Devolving Missiles, because Devolving Missiles on 2 8-drops is really not all that exciting. But it was weird to me that he wanted to cast it that turn, which seemed to be where his instinct was. And of course, casting Hearthstone at this speed is very foreign to us, so it's somewhat tricky to get all the thoughts through in someone's individual turn. But I am absolutely not talking it down. I'll take this speed any day of the week. Told you, it's just
I'll take this minion any day of the week if I'm RDU here. And then he just said RDU, which is close enough. Now I do like the dodge of the Arcane Intellect. If you look at the deck sizes here, RDU only on 8 cards. He might not want to over-accelerate this into fatigue. He is only on 14 health as well. So it's just that thing where you have to just keep it just one eye on, just to make sure you don't lose a game that could be very, very winnable if you just keep a handle on that deck size. xBlyzes is going to get that Solarian Prime, but not go for it right now. What's the spell damage? It's cheaper to have access to more Cram Sessions.
Does find his Evo. Evo costs 0. Finds the Sork alongside it. Okay. Things are happening.
Lethal?
I mean, yes. Empty your hand, generate 10 arcane missiles. Yeah. Can happen.
Is that another Devolving Missiles? Oh, Kaligos, not the worst pickup here. Kaligos, not the worst pickup here. Is the screen not keeping up with his hand? It's so funny.
Yeah. It's actually where being able to play at xBlyze speed is actually a benefit, though, when you played the turn he just did. Like, most players would have been roping by the time they cast Evocation, whereas he got to cast Evocation, look at his entire hand, then assess, then the rope appeared. Like, there are genuine benefits, you know, getting on your horse and actually getting on with a turn as soon as it starts, which is exactly what xBlyze has been doing this game, this series, and pretty much his whole career, it seems, up until this point.
Most importantly here, with the 17-17 frozen out once again, although it is just going to grow forever, if it doesn't ever get to attack, then it's a board space used up for RDU. It is a threat, of course. It makes xBlyzes have to respond, but we can see with another Ray of Frost, if xBlyzes can just hold on this minion, although will be lethal at any time it gets to attack, might not ever happen.
I am a little bit worried about this Keymaster Alabaster that RDU has on his board, because that reads whenever your opponent draws a card, you add a copy to your hand that costs 1. Which does seem potentially problematic for xBlyzes' chance of winning this game, because he needs like his Solarian to die and then draw his Prime, most likely to be able to get out of this, unless he goes like Kalagos Puzzle Box right now. But if the Prime gets drawn, RDU just gets a 1-mana copy of it.
I honestly think, although that is of course a problem, I think xBlyzes is focused on Kalagos win the game at this point, because he has nothing else. He doesn't even have that many cards left. Obviously the Prime is huge, but generally I think xBlyzes is very all in on just this. Kalagos has to do something pretty magnificent, and the draw is going to be Shambhala.
The fate of the world hangs in the balance.
This needs to be huge. It's got to be at least Blizzard, but preferably Puzzle Box. Yeah, Blizzard does the job. It does the counter spell. Oh, no, xBlyzes! Xblyzes.
I mean, you had to go for it, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunate there, but before the orders come out, there's the concede. RDU gonna even the series up 2-2. But the problem there was if he went for like testing the secret, then Blizzard becomes 6 mana and he can't play it anyway. So I think he just had to go and hope it was good enough. So not a misplay there from xBlyzes, just an unfortunate outcome for him. But honestly, this series is just on a knife's edge right now. Both players are playing at least relatively fast, but the game is being so close, because honestly, if that Blizzard went off, if that wasn't Counterspell, it still looks tough for xBlyzes, but the game just continues, because suddenly RDU can't play any minions if they're all frozen.
Yeah, it does. So, two things. There's literally no way around that, because Kalagos isn't even like an active effect when it's on the board. It's literally your turn. So you can't even go like Ray of Frost first, then Kalagos, then get a discounted spell. It doesn't work like that. It's literally the first spell you played this turn. Secondly, RDU actually did something really smart that we kind of glossed over. Both players probably did lots of things that were really smart that we glossed over, because it was kind of hard not to with the speed that the game was going. But I was talking about the Solarian at the exact time where he froze it but didn't kill it. So that meant that not only could xBlyzes not draw the Solarian Prime that turn, because he chose not to kill the Astromancer, he also froze it so that xBlyzes couldn't trade it off that turn, meaning that he then couldn't draw it on the next turn either. And, while I was being, getting hyped up about dumb stuff, like you draw a 1-mana Astromancer Solarian yourself, like, probably better to just completely deny Astromancers being drawn for either player, since you're the one that's miles ahead. And if you're miles ahead, simplifying the game is massively in your favor, which is what RDU played to in that position, which I think is really, really smart. But yeah, the counterspell was pretty much always going to be a lockout there, regardless of what happened from the Kalagos outcome, because it was just unbreakable. Whatever big spell was going to come out was going to get countered. There was no real way around that from xBlyzes' side.
Yeah, and that does mean we are going to be going into this last game. It's going to be Mage for xBlyzes once again, and a Warrior for RDU. And just one more reminder, the Warrior is that Turbo Bomb Warrior. It's not the Control variant, and I think this might be a matchup in which that's actually a bit of a weakness, at least just at surface level. Again, I've not actually practiced Turbo Bomb Warrior versus this Mage list that much times before this weekend, of course, but I feel like maybe the lack of removal and some safety nets for that might be a bit of a problem for RDU.
Generating Risky Skipper off your Sky Raider certainly does not fall under the category of problems for RDU, though. That is absolutely nutty. Risky Skipper, huge card in this matchup, regardless of what variant of Skipper Warrior you are playing. So many of the minions in the early game are just 2 health, 3 health, and very, very crucial targets to remove. Just mainly so you don't take early chip damage, but then obviously if one of them is a Sorcerer's Apprentice, that is an absolute priority kill in every single situation.
Now it's just going to be the slow armor ups there for RDU. Days have gone of getting Livewire Lance on 3 after the Corsair cache. But it does mean he has some very powerful plays in the next few turns. Wrench Caliber, then he has options. He's got the Blade Storm for emergency removal tools. There's Captain Greenskin just to keep this boat rolling, but he also just has that Hench Clan Thug if he really wants to just maybe open up another option for himself. But meanwhile, Blyze is going to get that Firebrand down. And looking at his hand, Sol, do you think Blyze is going to go highly fast and aggressive here? Or do you think he's going to try and just sort of play turn by turn and wait for the big pop-off?
He does have pretty good pop-offs available quite quickly with Shambhala coin cheap spells in hand at this point. Whether he wants to milk it for 2 activations, which he can get with a little bit more mana or as soon as he draws a Sorcerer's Apprentice, remains to be seen. But I might have liked to have seen him just go off a little bit quicker and try and swing the board state, because now he saw Greenskin come down. He knows he's in for a world of hurt extremely quickly if he doesn't start generating a pretty powerful board of his own. Try and put RDU on the back foot.
Right. And key cards as well. If Liza can generate Frostbolts, it's even more powerful versus RDU's version of the deck, which is very focused on buffing this Wrench Caliber and swinging turn after turn after turn. So even one Frostbolt will buy Blyze a huge amount of time. So that's one of the key cards to look out for from these many, many generation and discover effects from Blyze's Mage.
It's just so much damage available to RDU already. His opponent's at 21. He's got 3 that goes face to 18. He has 8 more damage from his existing weapon. Puts Blyze at 10. He then has a second Wrench Caliber for 6 more. So a single bomb draw this game is lethal, based on just the damage that we can see now from RDU's hand. That's so much damage.
And again, I love me some silly suggestions, but I was even wondering, does RDU shield slam the lab partner and get 3 extra damage to face? Like, I was like, does he do that? But then when you look at some of the key threats, like Ras, like a Shambhala, then there are very key targets to be able to shield slam. But it was just for a moment there, I was like, it is 3 extra damage to face that turn.
Oh my goodness. Blastmaster Boom as well now. RDU already past halfway through his deck, just with those 2 cutting class, and has Battle Rage in his deck. He's going to have everything he needs here to clean this up. Armorsmith Shield Slam, maybe? Is he looking to follow up on this risky skipper play for the board clear?
This looks pretty solid, doesn't it? And again, the I've talked a lot about the risky skipper package feeling a little bit weird in the Control or this Turbo variant of the Bomb Warrior. But I will say against Mage, it's almost always going to get work done, isn't it? Because the minions that Mage plays outside of some of the big legendaries are just minions you can kill with a relatively small risky skipper tool.
Right. Blyze saying that he has no option but to pop off right now, draws the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which really did seem to be his cue that he was waiting for. Like I said, he had the option to go off a little bit quicker, which kind of surprised me that he didn't, honestly, because he did play so tempo-focused in the other games that we saw him play Mage. Just jamming out Spider Tanks, just trying to play on curve and just, maximum biggest minion every turn, hit face. Whereas, this way he kind of diverted this a little bit, which, might be matchup-focused, might think that he needs to do something more impressive because he's playing against specifically a warrior here, but him going a little bit slower is really not looking like it's going to work out too great for him.
Yeah, and again, I'm already just very interested in this turn because Blyze has gone for the Mana Cyclone there just to go absolutely nuts on the cards, but he actually just as much could have been an Evocation turn to try and, generate a handful of maybe secrets, maybe you can get an Ice Barrier, maybe you can get that Frostbolt we talked about, and so on. So again, it's just, I feel like every single player I watch play this deck just has slight differences in the ways they go about the big turns.
Mm-hmm. Face and Brawl. I think RDU will have looked at various Blade Storm, Risky Skipper kind of interactions, looking like he can find some way to get an effective clear, spend less mana, potentially equip Wrench Caliber and just smack face that turn like he would really, really want to, but I don't think it's available. I think it was just always a Brawl and Blade Storm turn, which is what it ended up being. You see one of the happy benefits of Blyze ending his turn with a full hand there is that he did manage to defuse one of the bombs that he has remaining in his deck.
Right. And I do like the play RDU did go for then that last turn. Just keep it simple, right? Brawl, Blade Storm, kills everything. It's just done. You don't have to worry no matter what happens, and just play it safe, as you said. RDU looking quite far ahead, but that was a pretty good turn for Blyze. That is two pretty annoying minions for RDU to try and deal with, especially when one Brawl Blade Storm's already gone.
Yeah, especially the fact that Coilfang Warlord, it's such a huge threat with 9 attack that you do feel like you have to kill it, but as soon as you do that, you're putting a taunt minion in the way of your gameplay.
Right.
Which is particularly frustrating if you're RDU in this position, because you do want to continue to get damage through the face. Although as long as you can get one through here, it's not the end of the world, because you're just putting your opponent on one bomb draw for lethal at that point. Especially now you see the secret deactivated, you've ruled out the ice barrier, which is something that could potentially mess with your plans.
And do you like the Wrench Caliber here? Does Wrench Caliber go? Because, and the, I guess, assumption he will not die on that health. He could die, but considering he knows Blyze has a handful of generated spells, there could be 3 fireballs in that hand for all he knows. But
yeah,
it sets him below 5, which is such a big deal.
Yeah, so if I'd have played this Hench Clan and it wasn't Mirror Entity and nothing bad happened, yeah, I'd be 100% on this plan. That extra 4 damage has scared the life out of me right now. Because this plan, I think this plan is smooth. You go face, and then you have Risky Skipper Blastmaster Boom plus your weapon attack again to try and end the game. But there's so many things that are problematic. The fact there's a potential taunt minion that can come out of Blyze's Coilfang Warlord, which you know he has second Conjurer's Calling. So yes, boom, exactly that. Thank you, Blyze, for playing along. Yeah, multiple taunt minions coming out. So now that's face attack is down the drain. So now you're kind of purely relying on the bombs to come out. And then obviously you want to be able to attack to get another bomb to go into the deck. But if there's huge taunts in the way, you can't even do that. If there's a Frostbolt or a Deep Freeze that's been randomly generated in your opponent's hand, you can't do that because they shoot it at your face. If there's Fireballs that are in your opponent's hand, you're probably just dead. So there's a million things that can go wrong with this plan that RDU had here. But I honestly think it's about as good as he had in this situation.
He did end up with 2 taunts as well, not just the one, so there's an extra level there of just being able to deal with it. But I will mention as well, RDU is not running Coerce, so he can't just, bat away one of them and make it a little bit easier. The Shield Slam is not really going to get there with no armor generation either. He could go for the Secret Passage and just see what else he's got available to him if he doesn't like this hand. But he's probably just going to go for the Brawl.
Yeah, drops the Shield Slam to check the secret again. The secret is Flame Ward, but RDU will be worried about Counterspell, will be worried about Mirror Entity again, will be worried about the implications of Ice Barrier for his long-term game plan of just ending the game here as well. So it does look like he's just going to go straight up Secret Passage fishing here. Did take that on the previous turn. There's 2 upgrades that he's been without the game, but he does hit the Lord Barov, which is absolutely insane for him. But more importantly, active Zephyrus off the top, 5 mana available, straight up lethal. Blyze is going to find his way down into the loser's bracket. What a sick way to end the series. RDU needed to not only hit the Zeph there, he also needed to make sure it was active, which you can see he drew double upgrade, which was still in his deck, so the Zephyrus wasn't even necessarily active going into the turn. He drew double upgrade and the Zeph to activate it. Pretty insane stuff. But as you can see, he also gave himself the out of Lord Barov, right? He gave himself that security blanket by playing his skippers first, then playing the Secret Passage. So he's saying, okay, I can get the absolute nuts, which is active Zephyrus, and win the game. But if I play these skippers first, I get a security blanket of saying if I draw Lord Barov, sick, that works too. And I'm still potentially in the game, depending on what those 7 drops are that come out of the Proto Drake. So, what a series. I feel like I haven't stopped talking for the past hour entirely. It's so
That's
hard
just
to
most
keep
of the time,
up with
Sol.
it. That is true. I do enjoy the sound of my own voice. But, that was an incredible
So did everyone
series.
else earlier.
That is true. I mean, if you want me to go back to that, we can. I'm sure I can find a way to break my mic again. I seem to be really good at it as far as this broadcast goes. So, but it was just an incredible series of Hearthstone. And, Blyze, I would have loved to see him get off to a winning performance, but you can't fault RDU picking up a win there too much as well. Absolute legend of the Hearthstone scene. And Blyze, is still going to have his option to prove his point as a great player from the lower bracket. He is not eliminated yet. Do not fret. We'll be seeing him a little bit later on after we conclude our way through the winners bracket.
Yeah, it was, again, I will just reiterate, it was a pretty cool series overall, a couple of tense moments, and the lightning-fast single game of that Druid from xBlyzes in game 2, where it was like, you just cheesed that win with Alex Strasser off the top. Let me just get a quick win to even this up, but we are going to be moving on. We'll check in with those players a bit later, as you mentioned. But match number 2 is going to be Bunny Hopper versus Tice. Yeah, match of Titans, and we are going to see the Warriors banned out. Obviously, Bunny Hopper can't ban Priest from Tice because he doesn't run one. So the Warrior's going to be gone there. But Tice also choosing to leave Priest up and get rid of Bunny Hopper's Warrior, which again is just quite interesting to me because personally I'm terrified of Priest right now. I think it's absolutely insane. But we can check out, just going to triple check here what Bunny Hopper's Warrior exactly is. But what do you make of the bans overall?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've generally been seeing this